On Christmas Eve, as the Church prepared to contemplate the mystery of the Incarnation, an unexpected intervention brought a wound that had never truly healed back to the center of the debate. Cardinal Gerhard Ludwig Müller, former prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, gave an interview to the Catholic portal cath.net on December 24th, offering a severe but nuanced interpretation of the liturgical and doctrinal crisis facing the contemporary Church. At the heart of his words was the application of the motu proprio traditionis custodes, judged not on the level of intentions, but on that of the concrete effects produced in ecclesial life. According to Müller, one of the erroneous assumptions that has guided many decisions in recent decades is the belief, never truly founded in official texts, that the Second Vatican Council considered the traditional liturgy as something outdated. The Cardinal recalled that the Council never spoke of an obsolete liturgy nor called for a break with the received form. On the contrary, the conciliar documents move in the logic of continuity, of an organic development, not of a caesura. Yet in the subsequent period, this approach was often betrayed by ideological interpretations that transformed a prudent reform into a radical change. The new form of the Roman Rite, Müller observed, was introduced with a rapidity that left many faithful without tools for understanding. There was a lack of adequate theological explanation, as well as pastoral support capable of grasping the profound meaning of the changes. The result was a silent but real fracture. Entire communities suddenly found themselves deprived of a sacred language that for centuries had structured their faith, their prayer, and their vision of the mystery. Over time, this disorientation has been compounded by phenomena that the Cardinal did not hesitate to define as degenerations. In many celebrations, the focus would progressively shift from God to man, from liturgy as an act of worship to liturgy as a space for personal expression. When the ritual becomes self-referential, Müller implied, it loses its essential function to orient the soul towards the transcendent. It is in this context that we must understand the reaction of those who sought refuge in the previous liturgical form, not out of a spirit of opposition, but out of a need for doctrinal and spiritual stability. Strict adherence to the Missal of 1962 is thus interpreted as a response to a void created elsewhere, not an escape from the present, but a defense of Catholic continuity. Müller emphasized that many believers perceived that liturgical form as a barrier against arbitrariness, a place where the faith was transmitted without ambiguity and without adaptations dictated by the spirit of the times. It is against this backdrop that the most vocal criticism of the implementation of Traditionis Custodes arises. According to the Cardinal, the measure attempted to resolve a complex issue by imposing external uniformity, resorting to rigidly applied disciplinary measures, a method he defined as authoritarian, not so much for its legal existence, but for the lack of theological and pastoral sensitivity demonstrated in its implementation. The unity of the Church, he reiterated, does not arise from the suppression of legitimate differences, but from sharing the same faith. Müller clarified that the Pope's authority over the Church's rites is not in question. However, this authority cannot be exercised as if tradition were an obstacle to be removed. It must remain in harmony with Catholic doctrine and with what, over the centuries, has been recognized as the authentic expression of the faith. When authority becomes detached from the truth, the risk is that ecclesial governance becomes a functional management, more concerned with efficiency than with the salvation of souls. The interview then broadened its scope to the broader cultural context in which the Church operates today. Müller denounced the growing influence of reductive worldviews, which tend to view humanity exclusively in a material and functional sense. According to the Cardinal, when we lose touch with nature and moral law, we end up constructing abstract theoretical systems, incapable of holding up to reality and destined to generate confusion rather than liberation. In this framework, the theme of corporeality and emotional life is brought back to a holistic vision of the person. Müller insisted that every human dimension, if separated from authentic love and responsibility, risks becoming destructive. It is not a question of moralism, but of Christian realism. What is not ordered towards the good of the person ends up backfiring on him. A key point of the speech concerns the role of bishops. For the Cardinal, a pastor cannot simply follow cultural trends or replicate organizational models. It must possess solid theological criteria to discern what builds faith from what weakens it. Without this discernment, the Church risks losing its mission, reducing itself to an institution that administers processes without transmitting truth. Müller finally linked the current crisis to choices made in recent decades. The Church's progressive loss of vitality, he stated, cannot be reversed by reviving models that have already proven to be failed. The solutions adopted since the 1970s, oriented more towards adaptation than testimony, have not stopped the decline, but have accelerated it. Committees without faith, structural reforms without attention to souls and assemblies, devoid of missionary impetus, lead only to disillusionment and a silent flight of the faithful. The words spoken on Christmas Eve did not have the tone of a polemic for its own sake, but that of a reasoned indictment. At a historical moment in which the call for unity risks becoming synonymous with conformity, Müller's intervention presents itself as a demanding call to truth, tradition, and pastoral responsibility. A reminder that, inevitably, continues to question the conscience of the Church. The January consistory is approaching, and according to increasingly insistent rumors, Pope Leo XIV may finally put the liturgical question on the table, not as a marginal detail, but as a central issue left unresolved. If so, it would be a strong, unexpected, perhaps decisive signal. In your opinion, is this really the time to reopen the debate on the liturgy, or will everything remain as it is? Let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.